This is a Canadian Politic. Thanks for joining me. Today I got more information on COVID-19 and exactly what direction our country should be taking. And do we need to shut down our economy? And I got information what you need to do to protect yourselves and your community. So I got information on this and much more, so stay tuned. At any point in the video, you can hit subscribe in the bottom right hand corner. Thank you guys. We definitely had quite the week, and seems like people are really on edge.
Just makes me want to burn this motherfucker down.
Then, of course, we have our wonderful conspiracy theorists. And who knows, it might really be the rapture. And I know conspiracy theorists hate me, but I'm going to give you the real information, and I'm going to cut the BS. And the real virus that's spreading here is the virus of misinformation. That is the one thing I want to settle in this presentation. That no matter what, we'll always have to deal with these types of things. The best thing we can do is contain and manage these problems. There are other countries that showing us the way. Is there any way we can control the spread of the virus? And who exactly can we learn from? Either way, we can't stop the wind. And whether we like it or not, we'll continually have to live with the threat of an outbreak. So what should we do? Should we run scared into our houses and not come out? Or do we just go on with day-to-day life? Well, I got two examples of countries that managed to curb the rise and spread. I'll let you decide which is the best solution. And China will be the first example that we're going to talk about. They're able to rapidly reduce the spread of the virus by forcing residents to isolate themselves, and they forced businesses to shut down as well. This was in Hubei province, whose capital is Wuhan, and this is said to be the epicenter of the outbreak. Even though this was considered radical, it was a virtual success. And as of March 19th, China recorded no new cases. And we can see in this chart here the success that China has had. We can see by the end of February it tapers off. So the isolation has worked for them. Though you got to ask yourself, at what cost were they able to achieve this? And China was able to achieve these kind of results by shutting down their whole economy. Factories, restaurants, malls, banks, you name it. As a result, they're officially in recession. And if you don't believe me, well, look at this. And this is China's PMI for February. This is the lowest rating China has received since the index began. The Purchasing Managers Index is an index of prevailing direction of economic trends and the manufacturing service sectors. The purpose of the PMI is to provide information about current and future business conditions to company decision makers, analysts, and investors. The reason a PMI is so important, it tells investors the strength of the economy and where to invest. When a score is under 50, this tells you that the economy has retracted, and when it's over, it means the economy has expanded. In China's case, it's under 50, so that means the economy has retracted. And quality of life is just as important to consider while we battle COVID-19. And part of maintaining this quality is that we maintain our finances. If people can't work, pay their bills, we'll see more suicides. When it's hard to find a job, people often turn to drugs. So we might curb the death rate on COVID-19, but we'll see a growth in suicides and opiate-related deaths. We'll also see an increase in broken families, and it'll be harder for those kids to succeed. So really, there are many other factors than just the COVID-19 death rate. So is this the answer? Is there any other country that managed to curb the spread without shutting down the economy? Quite surprisingly, the answer is yes. We got three options. 1, we could do nothing. 2, we can lock down our country and cripple the economy. Or 3, we can find a midpoint that's both effective at reducing the spread and at the same time we don't lose our productive capability. The country that really showed us the way is South Korea. It's about containment and management. South Korea already had an experience with an earlier outbreak, another COVID virus known as MERS, and that's Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome. You can say they had an advantage over us because of this. MERS was 10 times more deadly than the novel COVID-19. They already disinfected public spaces regularly and have hand sanitizer available in these locations. They have strong communication with the public and healthcare workers as well. They locate at-risk areas and funnel resources to these locations. In airports, they are able to contain passengers who might be infected. They have procedures in place to screen passengers to determine whether or not if they are sick. They also have methods to effectively screen the public. They contained and managed it by doing these things. As soon as the epidemic was detected, right away they sprung into action. Airports immediately canceled all flights from Hubei province and separated passengers who came from other parts of China. They also took body temperature readings to screen who might be sick. They also sanitized public spaces more regularly. When cases started springing up, health authorities would immediately investigate the source of where the individual picked up the infection. They would also do a follow-up on other people who may have contracted it. One patient who was a religious follower was found to be at the source of a major jump in cases, and unfortunately she had contact with thousands of people, and health authorities managed to track those people down. Action was taken in the most at-risk areas. Drive-through screening stations were set up to reduce spread and increase convenience. They are also truthful with the public and tell them how severe the problem is. This is done so the public knows how to protect themselves. Some other countries have hid the facts, and this led to an even worse problem. And we've seen this in Iran and China. They did this so there wouldn't be a panic. South Korea showed us if you treat people like adults, they'll act like adults. Not only were the health authorities taking action, but the people themselves also took necessary precautions. They limited gatherings, reduced outings to restaurants and shopping centers. They didn't shut down the economy, but slowed it down in certain spots by providing people with information on affected areas and what areas they should be avoiding. Information on affected areas would be key for Canadians. That way we know what areas to avoid. Everyone is assuming it's unsafe no matter where you go. This is causing undue harm to small businesses. The problem in Canada is you can't get tested even if you have symptoms. And screening kits are being rationed, so there's only enough for the highest priority. Right now, Canada doesn't know who's infected or how many people are infected. Expanding testing capabilities would be key to determine who is sick and where the most affected areas are located. It's like trying to fight a fire blind. So this is one area where we need to improve in Canada. For more clarity on how South Korea achieved such good results, I'm going to go through the actions they took. Number 1, they were prepared. And plain and simple, they had measures in place previous to the outbreak. When the outbreak was declared, they took immediate action. They canceled flights and split the travelers who might be infected from other travelers. They funneled resources to the most at-risk locations. They also investigated each case to determine the origin of spread. They also disinfect and have hand sanitizer available in all public spaces. All of this involves pre-planning and budget specifically allocated to germ warfare. And that's exactly what this is, guys. We need to treat the spread of infection like it's a threat to national security. Number 2, South Koreans are screening the public. Currently, South Koreans are testing more people than anywhere else in the world, having carried out 5,200 tests per million. Canada stands at 837 tests per million, so in comparison, we're still rather low, but we're doing far better than the US, which only carried out 74 tests per million. The Korean government made screening stations easily accessible to the public and doubled down on screening in at-risk areas. This is key to detecting infection and limiting points of spread. If we don't know who's infected, we'll have no way to control the spread. Like I said earlier, it's like trying to fight a fire blind. Number 3, the South Korean government tells the truth. South Korean officials don't hide facts. They let the population know how to protect themselves. They provide them with information on what areas to avoid. The whole reason this became a disaster in the first place was the result of information not being shared with the public. Certain governments chose to hide facts so people wouldn't panic, whereas South Koreans took a different path. They decided to treat everyone like adults and immediately shared important information with the public. Number 4, the public in South Korea took precautions seriously. All Koreans took necessary precautions. They protected themselves and each other by doing so. South Koreans wear masks in public spaces and regularly use hand sanitizer. In affected cities, patrons limited their travel to essential travel only. They also had cooperation of religious, public, and private institutions. South Korea managed to curb the rise in spread without losing their productive capacity. If everyone thinks we can bunker down with no end in sight and not have a plan, then come out of this and just go back to how things were before, you're wrong. There will be millions without a job. We will be in a deep recession and in hyperinflation. The government can't just provide all this compensation for job loss with no revenue. If we deplete our productive capacity, mark my words, we're setting ourselves up for disaster. These are the key things that happen in countries like Venezuela. They depleted their productive capability and overprinted their money. People like to use Venezuela as an example of why we don't want socialism, but what they don't include is that Venezuela depleted its productive capability. When the government lost its revenue, that's when they started seeing inflation, and eventually much worse, hyperinflation. Already in Canada, we have a budget problem, and our governments are recording record debt. Believe me, guys, we are not immune to hyperinflation. We need to maintain our productive capability while we battle this thing. And we also need a specific timeline on this. We can't even do this for a month. If you think small businesses can stay afloat paying people while not making any money, you are mistaken. They will go out of business or have to lay people off. If you think the federal government can keep them afloat while obtaining no new revenue and that this will not hurt the economy, you are also mistaken. When a country loses its productive capacity and just prints money, you will see inflation. And if it gets bad enough, we'll see hyperinflation. One thing we're not getting from provincial and federal governments is a timeline on when we can go back to work. There seems to be no plan. Okay, so we're shutting everything down, but what are we doing in the meantime to prepare ourselves when this thing really hits? There needs to be a plan on increasing hospital capacity. We also need a plan on how we're going to treat people that come down with COVID-19. In a province in Ontario specifically, we are headed for disaster if we don't change course. And here I got an article conducted by the CBC, and it outlines the problems that Ontario is specifically having. You can see in the headline, Ontario could run out of ICU beds, ventilators in 37 days, even if COVID-19 rates are cut in half, and that's according to the study conducted. The study was conducted by the University of Toronto, University Health Network, and Sunnybrook Hospital, among other institutions, and they warn a significant strain on crucial healthcare resources in the weeks ahead, calling for measures to rapidly identify and create opportunities for additional capacity to care for critically ill patients. So as you can see, yes, we're shutting everything down, but there's actually no clear plan to increase hospital capacity, so we're not even capable of dealing with the influx of patients. So this is quite alarming. So what I have here is the chart that they have been showing us in mainstream news. I'm going to explain exactly what this means here. So this dotted line indicates our healthcare system capacity. If we look at the red here, this indicates what will happen if we don't take protective measures. We'll receive a high influx of patients, and this will overcapacitate our healthcare system. If we do take these protective measures, like shutting down our businesses and all of our institutions, then our the healthcare system will be able to meet the capacity, and we'll see a rise in patients, and then it'll begin to dwindle down. After it dwindles down, life will return to normal. So here I got my version of the chart, and this is the extended timeline of the chart I just showed you. This is why we need to plan for the future. So in the original chart, if we take the preventative measures, our hospitals will be able to meet the influx of patients, and this is the hospital capacity I have right here in the purple. What they aren't showing you, though, is that our hospital capacity, just want to change the color here, our hospital capacity is actually somewhere down here. And the reason why I say this is because we're currently unable to deal with the influx of patients. So no matter what, even if we isolate ourselves, people are going to die. And we shut down and cripple our economy to no effect. Since our healthcare system won't be able to manage this, it will take longer than 3 weeks before this actually goes away. Italy has been dealing with this on record since January 31st. What is going to happen is people will have to go back to work, and they'll need to feed their families and pay their bills. And as a result, we'll see another increase in cases. So if you look at my chart, it shows how the cases dwindle down, just like they do in mainstream media. And of course, mainstream media, their chart, it ends right there. But what's going to happen, since our hospitals can't deal with the influx of patients, people are going to have to go back to work again, and they're going to be contracting the virus. So what we're going to see is we're going to see another huge influx of patients. And I'm okay with bunkering down just so long as there is a plan to raise medical capacity, then control and manage this thing. If we don't raise capacity, we'll all come out of isolation to a world when you get sick, you'll end up in a non-ICU bed. And well, you'll just end up dying on your couch. There needs to be a timeline. If we shut things down, we need to do what we can to get the necessary resources in place. We might be dealing with this for months to come.